Hello and welcome back to the first video of 2021, and I'm sorry for not doing more videos in the end of December. It just got crazy. We were doing the pop-up shop on Savile Row and we just got carried away really. There wasn't enough time in the day to also do the videos, and then the new year came around, new lockdowns, new measures, and also new prospects with the business. So it was just a crazy time, but we are hoping to get back to it. In the hope of, and again, making no promises here, fingers crossed 2 to 3 videos a week, including the weekly drop. So we'll see how all that goes. Now, this is the first episode of our Q&A. So we did a Instagram story asking for a few questions, and a lot of you guys and girls sent them in. We have selected 10 of those questions to answer in this first video. I'm going to leave down in the description a link to the Instagram, so make sure you follow there and you'll see the next time we ask questions. But also the timestamps for when each question's answered, with also the question in the title, so you can just skip through to whichever question you want if you prefer. So to get your questions answered on this show, the best way is Instagram story when I put up the story asking for your questions. Now, if you're not on Instagram or you missed that, don't worry, leave a comment down below or email us at info@kibblewatches.co.uk. That's also in the description, and just specify that it's for the Q&A video, otherwise I will answer you thinking it's just another question I've been emailed. So let's crack on with the questions. Now, please forgive me, I'm going to probably butcher every single one of your Instagram titles. So the first one is from Gersonian, and he asks, best investment watches under 5k right now. So I'm going to start off with what I always say, which is watches aren't investments. Can they turn out to be? Yes. But should you buy them with that in mind? I don't think you should. Personally, I think watches should be enjoyed. So the best watch under 5k is the one you want the most that's under 5k. That's the simple answer to your question, but rather than being one of those people who don't actually answer the questions, I'm not a UK politician. I think that made the camera woman tickle. So the answers to this one is the Rolex Explorer 1, specifically the 114270. If you can find one under 5k, it's getting quite difficult now, I'll be honest, but if you can find one under 5k, good condition, chances are you might not get box and papers for that. But if you can, you're onto a pretty good deal. I think that's a good investment. Also, another Rolex, the Datejust, specifically the 16014 and the 16030. Now, forgive me if I got my references wrong. That should be a fluted bezel quickset and a engine turned quickset. I can't English at the moment. We're just going to carry on. I would recommend, if you can get those two, either in a linen dial or a blue dial, original blue. Be careful with the blues. There's a lot of aftermarket blue dials out there, and something that's quite notable on an original blue dial is around the lume plots, it starts to almost crack and go sort of like a, I'll try and put some photos on screen because I've had one of these in, but it almost like it radiates around the blue. I don't know how else to explain it, but that's a good sign. It means it's original. So keep an eye out for those. I think they're good investments. And a bit of an oddball, one that I think has a lot of future potential, if not already. And again, you might struggle finding one under 5k, but it's around that kind of price. It's a 1960s Omega Speedmaster 300, specifically the 165024. And again, we had one of these. It's with a Bakelite bezel. Really, really gorgeous watch, and I think a huge amount of collectability and future collectability in that model. So I thought I'd throw an Omega in there instead of just Rolexes, because whenever investment come up, it's almost always Rolex. So the next question is from Stefan.Watchik on Instagram. He says, which pieces has surprised you the most and what pieces has been underwhelming in person? Really, really good question. So my underwhelming one we'll start with, because I think it's going to surprise a lot of you guys and girls, is the Patek Philippe Nautilus in steel. So it's such a hyped watch. Retail prices and comparative to sell prices is ludicrous, and it's a watch that everyone wants. Now, is it a gorgeous watch and is it beautifully finished? 100%. But is it underwhelming? It really was for me, especially in the blue, the modern reference. The way the bracelet is very, very thin is elegant, but it also just feels quite flimsy. I won't lie, it doesn't feel very sturdy. And it just didn't speak to me. I think when you see a watch spoken about so much in terms of the watch world, but also every other world, you know, a lot of people know the Patek Nautilus in the rap scene, you know, it's what they always talk about as well. So it's a watch that's highly sought after in all areas beyond us watch nerds. You know, a watch like that you expect to be something incredible. And is it incredible? It's a great watch, don't get me wrong. If someone offered me one, I would happily take it, and I think it's a great watch. But it was very underwhelming comparative to the hype for me. Now, the surprising watch, and again, I think this is going to surprise a lot of you as well, It's the Lange. Now, that just sounded like a load of gibberish that probably came out of my mouth, but if you know the brand, you'll know the watches very well. Really, really incredible design and very iconic. So when you see a Lange out there in the wild, you know it's one of those. The design is great. The way it wears is really surprising for the size. And I'll put some wrist shots because we had a limited edition octopus in, and that was what first introduced me to the brand beyond actually knowing them. You know, I had never heard of them before we got that in. And after that, you know, I've been lusting after one personally for a while, so hopefully one day we will. Next question is from Watch This Space 82. Hello, Chris. Thank you for the question. He says, have you ever bought a watch and instantly regretted it? If so, which one was it? Now, for me, it has to be the Seiko Alpinist. Now, I'm a Seiko fan. I'm also a bit of a Seiko hater in some instances. A lot of you know this, but the Seiko Alpinist does nothing for me. So many people love it. It has a cult following. I get it, but it just doesn't do it for me. The green dial is very, very just not nice. The hands don't make much sense. The cathedral style hands with the inner rotating compass bezel, you know, it's a traveler's watch with, it doesn't make any sense. The gold with the steel, it doesn't for me, okay? And I'm gonna get hate for that, I know it. If you like it, thank God you do, because it means you buy them. You know, we all like different things, that's okay, but it's not for me. The next question is from Hugo.Kodesh. Again, apologies if I'm butchering that. He says, what was the best decade for watch design in your opinion? Now, easily it's the 1970s for my personal collection. I adore the 1970s watches. I think they're some of the best designed, most funky, crazy things ever produced. But I also have a deep love for the 1930s and 40s. 30s in that Art Deco sort of tank style and the reverso and things like that. And 1940s in the military style. So sort of like what I'm wearing today, which I forgot to do a wrist check. So we'll do that now. 1939 Omega oversized on a pigskin strap that was custom made by the strap tailor for us. But this kind of design, I love. But 1970s through and through. I'd love to know what your guys and girls' favourite decade of watch design is down below. Let us know. Question number 5, CJ Thorne. Thank you for the question. He says, how does that Lange feel on wrist? Well, it's not on wrist at the moment, but I can tell you it is insane. The watch is so simple, yet so incredible at the same time. It's, you know, a lot of people joked around saying, oh, nice Daniel Wellington, because it's that sort of insanely simple design, but there's something about a solid white gold watch on wrist, and you feel that heft, you feel that weight, but you also know the craftsmanship that's gone into that and the way those hands are polished. I mean, it's the simplest design I've ever seen, but also the best executed for what it is. So it's very, very surprising. If you get a chance, try one on. You know, unfortunately, you can't come to the office and book a viewing and have a look, but just buy it and then you get to keep it. That works. What do you reckon? Yeah, buy it. There you go. So, Kyle Andrew Pearson asks, thoughts on the Speedmaster moonwatch, the hesalite, worth the price increase for the changes? So, for those of you who don't know, he's referencing the brand new Speedmaster that got announced recently. It has a new movement, new bracelet, new clasp, and a couple of other things as well. And it's now $4.5 grand retail. Is it worth the price increase for the changes? It really depends on you. I mean, the Speedmaster has always been very well priced in my opinion. It's always been a very, very sought after watch. People always love it. And the history is undeniably great. Now, have they absolutely rinsed the hell out of it? 100%. And can you blame them? You know, if I had a watch brand that had the watch that went to the moon, I'd also rinse the hell out of it. So they're doing what I think any logical brand would do with it. Now, the standard hesalite is probably the most classic, well, it is the most classic version, it's the best version. Is it worth the price increase? I think yes. Where else are you going to find a watch with that kind of history, that kind of heritage, that kind of design execution from a brand with that much, you know, clout, if you will, for $4.5 grand? I just don't think you're going to do it. And when you compare it, and again, I hate to compare to Rolex, but when you compare it to the Daytona and the prices they're demanding, the Speedmaster's a superior watch, if you will. Granted, it might not be designed to your preference, but in terms of what it offers, it's a superior watch. So $4.5 grand I think is fair. Is it a big price increase from the last one? Yes, but I think we all saw it coming. You know, they've always sold well at retail. I used to work for retail with Omega, and we used to sell them outside the door at the retail price of $4 grand back then, all day, every day. You know, people didn't hesitate. They didn't ask for discount. You know, they bought it at that kind of price. So yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's a good price. I think it's a good watch, and I think if you like it, get it. So the next question is from Jacked Ward Mason or Jacked Mason, something like that. Again, apologies for butchering it. If you could only own one watch for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? Now, you've asked for one watch. I can't give you one watch. I love watches too much to just narrow it down to one. But I absolutely have always loved the AP Royal Oak 15202 ST, which is the blue ultra thin. I'll put the pictures up on screen. I think it just ticks all the boxes. It looks great. Granted, in terms of investments, their price has gone crazy. In terms of hype, everyone wants them. But I like the watch for what it is. The history with Gerogenta and the fact that this is the most true to the original reference. You know, it's a really, really gorgeous piece, and I think not massively underrated, but massively underappreciated for being a watch as opposed to an investment. So there's that one, but also a completely opposite polar watch, which shows the kind of collector I am. A vintage Tank American. It'd have to be a platinum or white gold because I don't really like yellow metals on me. But yeah, it'd have to be that. You know, I think they're both gorgeous pieces. They're both easily worn in formal environments, but also I think you can dress them down. A lot of people disagree with me on the Tank for that, but I mean, I wear my personal Tank on a bright blue strap. I mean, that's not dressy at all, so there you go. So next from Andre da Marta, again, apologies if I butchered that. He asks, any advice for a university student looking to possibly become a dealer in the future? Very good question, thank you for this. I get asked it a fair bit actually, a lot of emails come through. With regard to this, I'd say specifically to you, because you've said university student, make it a side hustle now. So a lot of people when they're in university, and I say this you know, because I know a lot of people in university who are like this, they have these plans and they always go, after university I will do this, after this I will do this. It's always after. Now by that point, you know, you're at university for 2 to 4 to sometimes 6 years, I think it can vary. So that's a long time to wait to do something, whereas there's probably going to be a kid like myself when I started who has not gone to university and is already building up his experience and portfolio, or her experience and portfolio, in that desired industry, whilst you're busy doing whatever it is you're doing at university. You know, continue doing it if that's what you want to do, but don't waste that time. You know, that spare time you have, instead of maybe going out partying at the weekends, you know, sit down at home and start researching watches, start buying some watches on eBay. You know, make the errors that people make in the industry, as opposed to waiting 4 years and then making them and then still being behind to the guy or girl who started before you. That's the biggest piece of advice I could do. Don't expect it to become the big thing straight away. You know, take those years of hustle and just make it work. So that's the advice I would give to you specifically as a university student, but it also applies to anyone who wants to become a dealer. Unless you have, I don't know, a couple of £100,000 of spare cash to be able to quit your day job and go into it full time and make it work, and invest in the right stock straight away, and, you know, do all the things that you're probably not going to do straight away, chances are it's going to have to be a side thing for you for a while. You know, you've got to put in the work, you've got to put in the time, and there's a lot of dealers I know out there who are doing it right now. You know, a couple of guys I know very well who are doing this on the side of full-time jobs like I used to. I think that's the way to do it, because then you're not at the risk of, you know, much, because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, it was just a side thing, right? And you've learned from it and you've gained experience. So that is my advice to you. And again, guys and girls, leave specific comments if you want, or specific questions for the next one in regards to this, because I can talk to my own experience and how I've done. Next question is from Wataki Watches. Again, apologies for butchering. What's the most money you could ever justify to yourself for a watch purchase? Great question. And the real simple answer, maybe the dodging answer, is it's relative. I mean, 4 years ago, the most I would have spent on myself for a watch was probably 50 to 80 pounds, maybe 100 pounds at a stretch. 3 years ago, that went up to like 250. And, you know, last year I was lucky enough to be able to get a Cartier Tank for myself and other pieces. So it's relative to where your life circumstances are, and also what you do. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be in the industry, so me spending the money I spend on watches could also be relative to stock, right? So I buy it for stock, I fall in love with it, and I can justify keeping it for myself on the business. So there's other ways around it, but I think just look at your own finances. You know, do I recommend buying watches on finance or anything like that? And, you know, a lot of people look for shortcuts that way. I don't personally. I think if you don't have the money for it, don't buy it. But then again, there's 0% finance out there, so it actually doesn't really make a difference to how much you pay total. So there are arguments for it, but just be responsible, be sensible, and look at your own circumstances and justify what you can do to yourself. If you feel like it's outlandish, then don't do it. You know, it's just a watch at the end of the day, and that's coming from someone who makes his living and pays for his bills off watches. Don't let it become an addiction. And there are people out there who I know have, so just be careful. So for me, myself right now, probably £2,000 is the most I could justify for myself on my current sort of life situation, but you know, maybe next year that'll be different. And the final question from Petite Seconds, thank you very much, hope you're well. He says, ever planning to go to Switzerland or France after COVID? Yes, yes, and yes. After COVID, I want to travel more and more. So there's been situations in the past where I've been very fortunate to be able to deliver a watch, hand deliver a watch to a different country in Europe. Will that happen after this? It's going to be difficult because of Brexit and other things anyway, regardless of coronavirus, because sales into Europe is now more complicated with VAT and tax and other things. It's a nightmare. Don't get me started. But I definitely want to travel more. We have a trip planned to Italy, which was supposed to happen in March, but is likely not going to now. So, I mean, we're already thinking of traveling. We just need to wait for things to obviously become more sensible with everything going on in the world and it to not be a risk to other people and ourselves. But yes, after COVID, you will see Kibble watches on the road and on the move as much as possible. Even in the UK, we're going to be traveling a lot. So there you have it, the first episode of the Q&A. As I said, don't forget to leave your questions. If you like this video, give it a like, make sure you subscribe, and most importantly, make sure you're following on Instagram because we release the watches that are coming early on there first, so you get the first chance. And to put it in perspective, we got up around 25 watches in recently, and of those 25, already sort of 7 I think have gone from just Instagram stories. So again, make sure you're following there. Anyway, that is it for today's video. Thank you all very much for watching. Keep safe out there, and we will see you all again soon. Take care.